Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome back here into Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Jonathan Turner alongside Mr. Nathan Wangler. It is Thursday, and while we say Throwback Thursday is the theme, we will start today off with a number of other things. But the first one, Mr. Nathan Wangler, is the fact that school is closed here for much of Michigan here today. And while that's okay, it does make things more complicated for my life because now my kids are here and I don't want my kids to be here. I want my kids to be at school where they're supposed to be. And Mother Nature has other things in store. So
As it normally does. Hey, but you needed a coffee refill and you just requested that one be brought to you. So you got a couple of little assistants running around the house. So I guess that's not too bad at the end of the day. Peter, what's up, man? From the icy tundra of Chicago, Chi-Town.
we
Yeah,
got
you guys
Jimmy
got to deal with the
Co
wind.
hopping in.
Good
He's in
morning,
Arizona
everybody.
though, so it's not as
Yeah, whatever. Probably 70 and sunny.
so yeah, a lot. I would say not a lot, but yesterday, made an announcement on the on our socials and on our website, and we're going to get into that this morning. And for those of you that don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, yesterday we released on our website that we were stepping away from the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association. And there's a number of reasons as to why that is. We won't get into all those reasons, but what we'll do today is we'll talk about um the main reason. And we've already alluded to it, to be fair. I mean, we talked about it a little bit yesterday as part of like what we're doing with our growth model and all the things that we're doing. So to be fair, if you were watching this show, it wouldn't be a shocker as to why we made that announcement yesterday. But I also understand what people might go, what happened, right? So we'll get into that this morning here on Inside the Game. But before we do any of that, Nathan, man, why don't you tell me how your day went yesterday?
Good. Yeah, for the most part, just I wouldn't say uneventful. It's just some days you get into this rhythm, and I'll say this. I know we always talk about the importance of being able to be comfortable, being uncomfortable, and moving around and doing different things. And different days are more unpredictable than others. But a lot of times we're all creatures of habit, and me specifically. So yesterday was certainly one of those days for me. So I got so much ADD that I have to put any to-do list on here. And I mean list out every single one of the things I wanted to do. So yeah, yesterday was an eventful one. Between doing all the different stuff I've had to do. Fortunately, I got to work on my car, and I have an old enough car that everything's kind of right there on the engine or around the engine. So got to get that done. But yeah, same old for the most part on my end.
Very cool. I mean, obviously for me too. I spent a lot of the day yesterday on the phones, as you probably could imagine. We, you know, and we're gonna bring on Dan Stickrat here in a moment to talk about this. I went to the Coaches Association back in it was either late 2021 or it was an early part of 2022. And we started this ranking show, and the whole purpose of reaching out to the Coaches Association, Nathan, was the intent was to create a platform, so that the players and the coaches and the teams could get more exposure. Right, that was the idea behind the ranking show. It had never been done before, and it's um, it was just something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I reached out to the Coaches Association. There were some question marks because again we had not been established yet, and they open arms. They're like, yeah, let's get this thing a go. And over the last 3 years, we've done upwards of 50 ranking shows. We did a number of Dream Team reveal shows, which would highlight these players. From across the state of Michigan, they would drive all the way into Troy to be a part of that show, and it was just one of those things where it was really really cool to be a part of. And something that Dan and I have been talking about over the last number of months is that as we were talking behind the scenes about this national platform, was how are we going to be able to um, do this in every state? You know, are we going to have to go to every coaches association in every state? Are we going to have to create relationships? I mean, I knew the coaching association for the most part, but I didn't know them. You know, you kind of have like this. I had been a part of it in the past, but it wasn't like, I was the greatest of friends with all of them. I just knew of it and kind of had some interconnections that people might know me. But aside from that, it wasn't like they were the best. Like I was best friends with everybody. So I know going into every other state, we could use a similar model. It just I just the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I realized that if we're going to be reliant on all of these other organizations to submit information to us, and it was going to it was going to be the detriment to one of our shows or whatever else, it just didn't make sense to be beholden to a specific organization, in
Mhm.
any given state. Right now, we want to have relationships and good relationships with everybody that we come in contact with, and I don't believe that our release yesterday like did anything other than the fact that we are announcing our separation from that organization. In the sense of like rankings, because that's what we've been doing for them for the last 3 years. It was not intentional for us to make it look as though it's some kind of a negative, because it's not. I mean, do we have in any relationship, in any partnership, there's going to be some differences of opinion and how things should be handled, but we always tried to I think put our best foot forward and tried to do what we thought was the right for both our partnership with them and also our partnership not our partnership with them, but our mission, what we're trying to accomplish here at NSN. And I want to make that very clear, that this is not like an ill will thing. This is not like, my gosh, we are so glad that we're not with them anymore. That has nothing to do with it. It's a business decision. It is a decision that we believe is in the best interest of the game of soccer from our perspective. You know what I mean? And I would tell anyone to go join this coaches association or any other association for that matter, because there's value in any association that you're going to, where coaches come to be a part of something like this. So yeah, there's no ill will there. But yeah, I want to bring Dan Stickrat in. Dan Stickrat is our director of news. And before I do that, I'm sure you maybe have a question or two before we get Dan in here. But I'm hopeful that that's a good enough explanation as to kind of what happened here yesterday, which also leads to what happened this morning, and we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, and it's all a part about the growth and maturation of the company itself. The truth is when we're transitioning from Michigan-based to national-based, and it doesn't mean that, I'm sure there will be a sense of kind of missing what was, because even in the 1 year that I was with you guys, and mind you, I wasn't with you the entire time, but I got to see that ranking show, as well as the show you guys had at the end of the year, to honor the different players that finished in different spots. I'll be real with you. That's one of the more professional, displays that I've seen in terms of honoring everybody all in one place that I've seen. And I know they do it in other sports, and I'm sure they probably live stream, and I'm not really paying attention. Obviously, I'm paying more attention because I was the guy cutting up the social media stuff for it. But it was cool to see that relationship, and it was nice to have all of that info available to us. And again, it increased engagement at the end of the day. But I know there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but it's also naturally, as you grow, right? Certain relationships, certain connections. It's not that they're not necessary anymore, but I just see this more as a natural step in the direction of where we're going. And you guys will have a better idea of how to kind of alliterate that better than I can, or illustrate that. Sorry. But, I just think this is kind of one of those steps that has to be taken.
Yeah, no, and it is, and so I'm gonna bring Dan in. We'll have this conversation. Dan Stickrat, man, welcome into the Inside the Game.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Dan Stickrat, our director of news. We might just start bringing Dan in, like good old John Clayton. Is that right? Remember that John Clayton?
He used to
Or
be on
bring
the
him in, like, just start
ESPN.
bringing him in, we'll just, I'm just gonna need you to, like, shave your head and, like, you already have the glasses and just kinda, like, have maybe even have, like, a pocket protector, maybe, like, right there, but,
There we go.
anyways, so, yeah, so Dan, so first off, welcome to Inside the Game, and we wanna dive into this. I know you have a perspective on this, and to be fair, this has been a labor of love for you for the last 3 years. This is something that you have thoroughly enjoyed, and I don't think people understand the amount of work that goes into what we do. I think it's real easy to, to nitpick the different things that can happen in any given moment, right? Oh, you got that one thing wrong, or the bug didn't do what it was supposed to do. We live in a world where, you know, uh, based on how good or bad of a day you're having, you want to point out the flaws of those around you or the things that you're part of. And not that we're not immune to that. um, and over time, I would imagine that um, we should expect more, right, from our company, right? We should expect more, right? And I'm not saying we shouldn't expect more today, but as a fast growing, kind of this platform, we are going to make mistakes along the way. We are going to make misprints. We're going to have edits. We're going to say things we shouldn't say. It's just part of the growing process. And as long as people understand that what the bigger picture is, which is we're trying to shine a light on the game of soccer, that, like, give us that moment, right? But when I sat down with you in I don't know, was it late? Again, it was maybe been early 2022. We sat at the Gathering Place in Troy, a place that me and you knew growing up, and we talked specifically about this. We talked about the high school rankings. We talked about what that looked like, and how we were gonna try to tackle that in a way that has never been done before. And I believe we did that in spades. But I'm curious what your thoughts are, and how we attacked that part of our of the rankings.
Well, it's beyond that because there was never a live ranking show in any sport in Michigan history. Like the Michigan High School Athletic Association, it releases their football pairings every mid to late October on television, but in terms of rankings by a particular coach association or the Associated Press, there's never been a live ranking show in Michigan. And I've never even heard of it in other states as well, where a group of journalists or broadcasters get together for an hour or an hour and a half on a YouTube channel or a television station and count down the rankings. And it's a lot of work that goes in behind that, constantly, researching current information on each of those teams that are ranked or honorable mention. There's a lot of work that goes into knowing the history of these programs. I think there is this misconception that people think that you just walk into the studio at 7:30 on a Sunday night, sit down, and you ramble through the rankings and you go home. It is a labor of love. It's something that you work on all year. When I put together like preseason rankings and player rankings, or colleagues of mine at other news organizations around the state, when they do that for football, when they do that for boys and girls basketball, whatever the state. I've known some guys that done stuff for high school hockey. It's something that you work on all year. It's not something you just pick up in the beginning of August, make 3 phone calls and put together some elaborate list. These things it is a labor of love. It takes a year-round effort. And now we're starting to grow into a lot of different states, and I'm trying to educate myself on the high school, on the club, on the amateur, on the collegiate, systems of every state. The long-term goal is to have something similar, but at the same time, I don't think, the general public and coaches and stuff understand how much time and effort, journalists and broadcasters do behind the scenes, prepare even for a single show. We all tune in to, ESPN and CBS, and these guys just don't sit down at their desk 5 minutes before they go live to do the, March Madness releasing pairings for the NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament. Those guys are they're following, they're studying this stuff year in and year out. I mean, you think that most journalists they're when they go on vacation, they're on their laptop, they're sitting there working. You know, if you are a beat writer for an NFL or NBA team, these guys, they never sleep. It is a labor of love, but you know, whenever there's any type of news, these guys, they've got to be, you know, if it's 6 o'clock in the morning, they need to be up writing a story, putting something online, you know, sharing it on, you know, various social media platforms, you know, because if you wait too long, it's just old news. And that's just the way the media has evolved here in the last 20 to 25 years. But there is so much work that goes in behind the scenes. And I say that in defense of anybody that is a journalist, anyone is a broadcaster, anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter what sport you are, you know, working with. There is so much that goes in behind. And I think people should, you know, understand that it's not just sitting down and rambling for an hour and going home.
Well, no, I mean, and to be fair, Dan, the one of the core, and I've told this to you many times, and I hope that you're not going to take any offense to what I'm about to say. I told this to you a couple times over the last couple of years. I'm like, Dan, if I could hire any writer, and that is 100% true. I could go out right now and find a writer somewhere in this country and just bring them on board. But the value of Dan Stickrat to our organization has been a staple in the soccer community in the state of Michigan, and that has been the core reasons that we brought you into this, into our environment. Because again, while you are a very good writer, you are, I would say, even far greater at your knowledge of soccer in the state. And that is the core reason why I sat down with you. There are other writers, and you know this, Dan, you've worked with them. There are other writers that are probably of equal value in the way that they write their stories, right? Or go out and grab information or research or things like that. But they are not as much in tune with the soccer community like you are. So, and to be fair, I never once had another conversation with another writer about this role with our business with you. Right? Never. I never did it. And it's because I knew the value of what that meant here in the state of Michigan. And then that's why even me and you have butted heads about the fact about even making this decision to step away from the Coaches Association, because you're like, John, like, where are we going to get this information now? Like, you know, we are getting the rankings are being provided to us, and now how are we going to do it? And, you know, so I know that me and you have had that. And I think it's important to also say that I do welcome opinions that are against what I think should be happening. Or what my vision might be. I do welcome them. And I do challenge our people who do work for us to bring us their different opinions. But yeah, the amount of work that goes into these shows, it's tremendous. I know I want Nathan to ask a couple questions of you too, but what I want to say this is I remember this very vividly. I had to go out of town here. My wife, her birthday, my daughter, their birthday. We wanted to go up to Traverse City this summer. It's the only vacation we went on this year. Went to Traverse City, and you know, most people bring home a souvenir that they can go put on their wall, right? Or they can wear, right? Me, I brought home a rash, and it put me in the hospital for like 6 days. Like, that's my souvenir from Traverse City. But the reason why I got that rash in the first place is because on Sunday morning, all the rankings were being sent to us by the Coaches Association. And I'm the one that builds the graphics every Sunday, right? So even if I'm not on the show, I was the one going in and building every graphic for every division, building social media, building the broadcast every Sunday for our crew. And I had my daughter, who's 11, will be 12 here next week. She wanted to get baptized. Like, my daughter she made this conscious effort that she wanted to get baptized, and she wanted me to be the one to baptize her. So we went up to the peninsula there in Traverse City, along, I don't know the name of the peninsula. It's, it's right there, right outside of downtown. It's like it takes you down to, like, I don't know, there's a lighthouse at the very, whatever.
The Mission Point or whatever.
Thank you. Yeah, we went down Mission Point, and along that way, there's just beautiful. It's a beautiful bay. It's shallow. It's beautiful. Matter of fact, it kind of looks like you're going up into like the Caribbean, like how clear the water is, and it's just really beautiful. So we got off, turned around, and parked our car, and we went down into the bay right there. And we walked. It was so shallow you could walk out a couple hundred yards. We walked out. I baptized Zoe right there in the water. Great moment, right? And the kids want to hang out in the water for a bit. So I went back towards the beach. I grabbed my laptop and I sat down on a rock. And from that rock, I had enough Wi-Fi signal from my phone. I was literally updating graphics and building everything in my computer at that point in time. By sitting on that rock, I did not know that there was some kind of a fungus on that rock. I sat in there for that rock for like an hour. I never went back in the water and washed off my legs. Had I done that, I wouldn't have got it. But I brought that thing home with me, and it put me in the hospital for like 6 days. And so it was like a gift that kept on giving in the worst possible way. But if I wouldn't have had to do the rankings the way that I do them every Sunday, I wouldn't have been on that rock. So this is a labor of love for me. It has always been that way, and we always wanted the show to go on. We always wanted to do what we could, it doesn't mean the show is not going to continue in another form. We'll talk about that too, but I just want to put that out there. I know, Nathan, I want you to ask some questions of Dan as well, and I'll let you do that.
Yeah.
Did we lose you? He froze on us.
I think Nathan froze.
Nathan Wangler.
That's like his
froze.
Baseball card right there. With tops across the bottom.
We got to screenshot this. This is we're gonna maybe remove him for a second and see if it happens here. Bring him. We'll try and bring him back in a moment. Yeah, he's still frozen.
Yeah, he's on the western side of Michigan, so.
Yeah, I don't know if obviously his location. He's still frozen. So while we're waiting for Nathan to come back in, I would say, that at least I'll ask a question. Now he's going to come back in a second. My question, to you, Dan, is let's talk about the Coaches Association for a second. I think that's an important thing for us to discuss. I don't think that there is an association on earth that you're going to have people that agree with everything that they do, right? I don't think there's one that, oh my gosh, like we are 100% in support of this, right? Every association has its ups and downs, its pitfalls, its shortcomings, whatever it might be, right? So, this is not, and I said this in my earlier part of my thing, in my earlier statement, is that I don't look at this as a negative. I don't look at the association as a negative. And I believe you don't do either.
No, I mean, to give some background, and I'm in my 33rd year as part of the, various levels of the media here in Michigan. And, we've also done some work here in various states, and we are rapidly expanding across the country. But I've worked with every coach association in the state of Michigan, whether that be the BCAM, which is the Basketball Coach Association of Michigan. There's, football, cross country and track, lacrosse, competitive cheer, volleyball, baseball, softball, on down the line, golf, tennis. They're all very different. Some I think are run more smoothly than others, but I've dealt with them. Anyone that works in the media in their particular states are going to deal with coach associations, and some are very well organizations. Some I think could use some improvement, but it's not our decision. We're members of the press. We're building relationships with governing bodies within the state that we work in, or creating relationships with athletics directors and varsity coaches and college coaches and recruiters and club coaches and anything that we're involved with as a member of the working media. And you have to take the good with the bad with that. And there's always going to be that. There's always going to be incredible relationships with one group of people, and then other groups of people there might not be a strong relationship. And it sometimes just boils down to the individual you're trying to work with.
So I know I'm back in the conversation now. My apologies for all that. I wanted to kind of ask you about this, Dan. and kind of focus in on talking about your line of work. And I know we were talking about the Coaches Association, but I imagine it's hard, right, for you having covered the sport of soccer. And I told JT this on an earlier podcast. I think I used the word encyclopedia when talking about you, because it is true. And on a lot of our broadcasts, and by the way, the break off from the Coaches Association, it kind of transitions into this. So that's why I'm asking this question. But you really just kind of have this deep well of knowledge, if you will, but it's come from the years and years and years that you've been covering the sport. It almost kind of comes to you naturally, right? Because you have this understanding. And I always laughed, especially when I watched those games back. You would bring up something that happened in the 90s, and I would be sitting here like, well, I was born in 96, so I don't remember any of this stuff, but I'm happy that you're here to be able to explain all of this. But now that we transition from Michigan-based to national-based, there's a lot of stress on everybody. I imagine it has to be probably the hardest on you, because you went from covering a state and a sport that you know like the back of your hand to now you're going across the country. And I see the breaking news and I see the stuff that you're releasing and the pieces, and it just feels like there's a lot, in a lot of ways, a lot of catching up for you to do on a national scale. How do you even make that transition as a journalist? Because again, the Michigan stuff, it kind of rolled naturally. And I guess that's the element of why I think I'm going to at least miss this relationship a little bit, was because us working together and having that information, combining that with your knowledge of the sport, it really felt like a professional product. How do we even begin to try and emulate something like what we had here in Michigan, at least from that perspective, in writing and journalism and reporting on stories? How do we start to emulate or copy that on a national scale, starting with your position?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's not going to be an easy transition. I'm one of those people, Nathan, where I guess you could call me a reader. Like, I love to read stories about, in particular sports and music. You'll laugh, but when I was a little kid, say in the early 1980s, I used to get up and, start writing down American Top 40 with Casey Kasem. And then we go to church and I'd miss part of the show, and it'd be, rerun in the evening, and I'd sit down with my pad of paper and write down the songs that I missed, but it's no different with sports. I just retain information. I study, not just soccer. I study a lot of sports. And I think that's something valuable that, I have some great colleagues out there in the state of Michigan or across the country that I've become good friends with. And a lot of these guys are the same way. An editor I used to work under back in the 1990s he used to say, you know what, you're one of those guys that just has the bug, where you just retain information, where you have such a passion to learn all the sports ins and outs, to building relationships with people, but to do it with, not with a sense of arrogance, but, really get to know coaches and athletes and parents and referees and people involved in different sports. And, it bodes well, because it's relationships. It's something that doesn't happen overnight, Nathan. And I learned that, early in my career. I was working for a weekly newspaper when I was, in college. And I thought, well, I have great knowledge. The coaches are just going to give me information. I realized after about a month, and this was really before there was email, there was an internet in the early 90s. You relied on your house phone, your office phone, and a fax machine. And I realized right away that it is an absolute grind, where you have got to pound the pavement each and every day, no matter what you're working on. If you're covering high school football, if you're working, something to do with track and field, soccer, that doesn't matter. It's the same concept, where you have to just continually research. So yeah, every day in the last 6 months, I have been all over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, adding people, reading stories, looking up information about high school and club, high-level club teams and college teams, and really spent a lot more time. I've always followed it, but I've spending even more time following like USL Championship and MLS. Because one thing you can say about the soccer community.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick. I don't know if it's my guess is you're just kind of tapping your computer a little bit. It's coming through like I don't know if people at home can hear it as much as we can, but I
use my hands too.
I just wanted to let you know if you're like tapping your computer on accident. It's coming through like pretty clear.
I'm normally all over here.
Yeah, but I just wanted to put that out there that we're getting a little feedback from your tapping.
So no more Neil Peart drum tapping.
No. That's nope. But you may continue.
No, I was just saying, you have to spend a lot of time and dedication to really, understand the ins and outs, because there's so many stories in every sport that are untold.
Yeah.
But you have to have knowledge. You have to research each and every day, even if that means sitting down on Christmas afternoon. You got, an NBA game on in the background, or NFL, game or whatever, and you're sitting on your laptop as kids are running around playing with their presents, and you're sitting there reading stories. You're looking up stuff on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, story links. It never dies. The news never lasts. And we're trying to obviously build relationships. I mean, I do know some people in other states, but nothing compared to what in Michigan. I'm 52. I've lived in Michigan my entire life, but it's a challenge. But at the same time, it's almost an exciting challenge, because I'm already here in the last week. I've talked to people in several different states, either on the phone or via email, and I'm looking forward to the chance that over the course of every month I can conduct interviews, not just on various levels of the soccer pyramid, as I call it, but, in so many different states. In just the last week, I've talked to people in California, Illinois, Florida, Maryland. It's there, and I'm constantly learning, and I'm asking questions. I always explain when I have a coach or a student athlete or a pro athlete on the phone, I always explain to them what we're coming from, like how we started a little less than 4 years ago to where we're at now, to where we want to be in a year or two from now. And it was funny because I had a young athlete on the phone a couple nights ago, and I said, hey, while we're on the phone, log onto our website. And her reply was, oh, wow. That was her exact words. Like, she was looking at that, and this is a high level club soccer player. And she's like, and I said, yeah, you see the possibilities of this? She goes, oh yeah. She was like, she could, visualize it. It's going to be a hub.
That's what I want to talk about next. And I want to say this very quickly, and so we can move on, is that great respect for the Coaches Association. I was really happy to have the relationship that we had with them. And the reason that we have to end our relationship with them was purely because of what we're doing next. We made our announcement yesterday, and this morning at 7:30 a.m., we opened up NSN Nation to coaches across America. And NSN Nation is a membership platform where coaches can come, be part of the community, learn from our education center, and be participants in that same process, and be a part of our ranking and awards process. That was launched. We've been working on it behind the scenes. I mentioned it yesterday a little bit on the show, but it is officially open for business as of this morning. And, to be fair, this does not compete against the existing membership of anyone in the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association, or for that matter, anywhere across this country. Now, you could argue it would be a competition for a national organization. I would say that's definitely a competitive thing, but I mean, most of your coaches associations in the state level across this country are members of national organizations as well. So it isn't a conflict on the state level at all. Obviously, from a national standpoint, it would be. But our mission at NSN Nation is we are going to be a place for everybody that's a part of soccer. So while right now we are launching the NSN Nation coaches aspect of our platform. We will be announcing here just later on in the month and in March, the platform for players, right? So players will have a place to come, be part of a community, be able to educate, learn about all the things associated within the game of soccer from the standpoint of whatever you could possibly think of, it will be there. Referees will have a place and a home on NSN Nation, and then parents, right? So this platform is not just built for coaches. It's not just built, for players. It's built for everybody, right? And that is where this is going to go. And the reason why I developed this platform was because if we're going to sit here and say to everybody that we're your home for soccer, that we have to be your home for everything in soccer. It just can't be us streaming. It just can't be us writing some news articles and featuring stories. No, you have to get everything from us. Right? When you go home, you sleep there, you eat there, you congregate with your family, you watch TV. I mean, it is everything. So when you envision your home, there's love, it's warmth. Well, for most of us, it might be warmth and love. Some of us, maybe not so much. But I mean, I want everyone to be thinking about like the love and when you go home, what that feeling is like. And we want that feeling to be here on NSN. And that is the mission. That's always been the mission, whether that was on the Michigan local level or now the national level. We want this to be your home. We want this to be a place that you feel comfortable in. You can take off your shoes, if you need to, like Al Bundy style, just kind of slide your hand right there, just on the waist side, right, and just get comfortable. We want this to be your home, and that's the next phase of this. The rankings and the awards that come with being part of the NSN Nation. It's part, right? We know how important awards are and rankings are. We know how that gets everybody's juices flowing and everybody gets excited about it, enthusiasm, the negative that comes with that as well. It would be nonsense for us not to offer that as an option, right? So we will have national and state awards that we will put out to the world. And our national awards will be twice a year. Right. And this will be it's on our website right now at nsnnation.com. Twice a year, we'll have awards. And they'll be for basically your kind of like your we broke it up into 2 seasons, kind of following the U.S. soccer, right? Where you've got spring, right? You've got all these spring things happening, right? Spring boys, you've got high school girls soccer, nothing really collegiately from an award standpoint will really make sense in the spring. So that'll be more youth and high school heavy. And then in the fall, at the conclusion of your college seasons and your high school seasons, then you'll have those awards as well. So we'll have 2 award seasons on our platform, spring and fall. Spring will be announced in June of 2025. Your fall will be announced in December. And why in December? Because to be fair, your collegiate game's still going on until the middle of December, right? So I mean, they don't even announce. I mean, the national championship isn't even awarded until like December the 13th or 15th or something like that. So we will announce all of our national awards at the end of December, right? So, and I think that's really important. And the whole process is still under development, but I think it's also important too as we kind of dive down this path, and we'll get into the best part about all of this, is that the component to all of this is self-submission. Right, we are heavily relying on coaches coming to us with information about their teams, their players, and what they're doing. And then once those things have been inserted into our system, then there's going to be an opportunity for us to create, lists of players based on these submissions. And then based on those lists, we will then work with committees in each state and across this country to, I would say, narrow the window of opportunities for these awards. And so when you start talking about your National Club Player of the Year for boys soccer, right, there'll be a list of 15 or 20 kids on this list. And the entire voting group, the entire membership group of NSN coaches, along with clubs, will have an opportunity to vote for those players. So it won't be some archaic thing where it's like, it's just Dan Stickrat and about 7 people in a room get to vote on who this player is. No, the entire country will have a chance to vote. Right. So, and that will be something that will help again, if you are the best player in the country, you should be marketing yourself as such as well. You should be putting the Lily Jacobs of the world, Dan. She is a great social media specialist. She puts her stuff out there all the time. She is trying to highlight who she is, what she does. She wants the whole world to know how successful she is. And that's not because she's got some ego. She wants to highlight herself. So the best players in the country, they need to take a play out of her playbook and start to do that as well. And if you do that well enough, then the people out there will know who you are within the community, and they'll vote for you because they know how good you are. And I like that idea that the general public, within the general membership public, will have a chance to vote for those awards and put people over the goal line, so to speak. So, yeah. And then the last thing I want to say real quick before we get this back into our conversation is the ranking show. What happens next? We will still have a ranking show. So the ranking show is not going away. All right. We will be redeveloping the ranking show. And the way that will look is still yet to be determined, but it will not be a local ranking show anymore. It'll be a national ranking show where we will touch on schools and clubs and professional and semi-professional teams all across this country in a show. So it will be geared towards every aspect of the game of soccer. And it won't just be one show for the Michigan or one show for Alabama. Will that happen maybe down the pipe? Yeah, maybe. But right now we're going to focus on trying to get this national audience to understand that we want to have these conversations. So our ranking show, which is on Sunday nights, that will continue here in March. And when it does, it will be a show that talks about all the players and teams and athletes around this country who play soccer and be part of that conversation. And it'll be, it'll just be a really, really, really cool show. And so we'll get you more information about that in the coming weeks, but it will still continue on our platform. But so Dan, is that anything you want to add to anything I just said?
I mean, no, there's a lot of information that we will release in due time. It's a process. It's something that's not going to happen overnight as well. So.
That is true. What about you, Mr. Wangler? What thoughts do you have on all this?
Well, I just wanted to ask Dan another question if I could, because I think he's got a lot of good information, and I'd like to get his opinions on things that are going on. Doing the national show and everything like that. Here's my thing, right? And as a journalist, this is something that has always kind of been centered, really, center of mind for you when you approach your job. And I know it is, but that's personal relationships with the coaches, right? And a lot of people in the soccer sphere. They're like when you come to a game or when you're there, I think there's an understanding of what exactly it is you're there for. The players know you, the coaches know you. I remember state championship Saturday when we were there, you were there as well, kind of down on the field, congregating with everybody. That's a really hard thing to do when you talk about expanding it out from one state to all 50 of them. Now you have to – I feel like in one way or another, I'm kind of a recruiter. JT's a recruiter. I've never worked for an athletics team before where I have to travel the country recruiting people. But in one way or another, it kind of feels that way. Now it's more through the phone, it's more through the laptop, it's more through different means than you're not hopping on a plane every other day and going to a different state. But there is that process of almost kind of recruiting people to what it is that we're trying to do. I know what it feels like from my perspective, right? I know what it feels like from JT's perspective. We've had these sales calls, we've had all this other stuff. But as a journalist, it's always important to get kind of on that deeper level sometimes in order to get people to buy into exactly what you're doing. Not only that, but get good information out of them. You talked about earlier, everybody has a story. And I agree. I think that's what makes this job special, because it's not just the uniform and the stats and where they played before. There's a lot more to it than just that. And there's something that carried every single person in that locker room to where they are today. So now you have to go around and kind of start cultivating those relationships on a national basis. When you talk about, that's really hard to do, especially when it took, as many years as it did to really, really kind of become a centerpiece in soccer in the state of Michigan. How do you go about recruiting and trying to get to that deeper level with the people on the national basis? I know you touched on it a little bit and said that you're kind of getting that direction. How does that process look?
Well, it's hard to like put a finger on. Like I said, in the last few weeks, I've made some phone calls and emails, and I've had some conversations on, you know, with athletes and coaches, but just explaining to them again. I touched on this a little earlier, where we came from, where we're at now, where we want to go. But you know, you talk about everyone has a story to tell. You have to talk to people, on that human level, like get people to trust you. Like,
Mhm.
I grew up playing sports. I played soccer. I played baseball. I ran track and field. I've been around athletics since hate to date myself, but in the late 1970s, my dad used to drive my brother and I out to like high school and college, like football and basketball games. And when I was 5 years old, yeah, of course, I was underneath the bleachers at a basketball game running around. But a couple years after that, I was sitting in the bleachers and I'm watching, and I'm 7 years old, and I started to really, really love sports, and it's just been a huge part of my life ever since. And yeah, I started playing soccer when I was 6, so just not just being a journalist, a reporter. I grew up as an athlete. I wasn't some big time college recruit. I did not play collegiate athletics, but I know what it's like to be an athlete. And you got to, so when you're interviewing an athlete, you make them feel comfortable. Like, hey, I went through this. I know what it's like. Yet times have changed. Things are a little bit more organized in terms of sports. Really, just in terms of kids. I mean, you talk about, parents are like, well, we got to schedule a play date. When I was a kid, you went outside, you knocked on the neighbor's door and said, hey, David, can you come out and play? And by 9 o'clock, we have, 30 kids outside playing baseball or soccer or running races or getting on our bikes, going down trails, whatever the case was back then. It's a little bit different mentality today than it was back then. But in terms of actually strapping on the soccer cleats, the baseball cleats, going out, running a race, training, whatever, I've been through that. So I understand what athletes go through. And I try to make people feel comfortable when I'm interviewing them, because we are expanding across the country. Am I going to be on a plane every other day to go to Alabama or Maine? No. Are the chances of me being in another state for an event? Yeah, that's possible, but I'm not going to be on the road every day the next 30 years of my life. But at the same time, I need to cultivate those relationships, in as many states and in many avenues of soccer and many levels as I can. I need to, get implanted in the world of public relations and sales and in communications from that aspect, because we are going to be working with some different levels of sponsorships from that side. So, you're looking at, it really is about, building relationships at all levels. And it will take time. Absolutely. Is it a challenge? Absolutely. But it's something that I'm welcoming, and other people that are in this organization or will be in this organization in the near and distant future. Is it something they'll welcome? I would think so.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I'll say is you're kind of a pillar, right? When I think of, this business and kind of like the founding fathers, if you will. I guess JT is, if we're going to put this into this perspective, he's kind of like George Washington. He crossed the Delaware. But you're on that list as well in terms of, the founding fathers of this company. And I asked JT to do this the other day on our episode, and I feel like it would be a good thing to ask you, because you're on the front lines. If you go to someone, right, and I'll be the first to say, there's not a lot of people that know about us right now. And that's the hardest thing about trying to pitch people, whether it be sales, whether it be any of the other things surrounding our company. It's cool to have a name like the National Soccer Network. We got a nice logo. We got a cool website. We got all these other things. But people really genuinely outside of the state of Michigan, and obviously a lot of people know MSN, and I was kind of crazy to see how many people did. MSN's a different story, right? In a lot of ways, when I'm calling people, when I'm calling businesses, when I'm calling individuals, I'm not saying that it won't be proven, but right now it kind of feels in a way like I'm dealing with, in one way or the other, an unproven product, because there's still a lot of stuff coming up that we need to execute on. But again, it's coming up down the line. We just made this transition. So if you're talking to these people as a journalist in the way that you do, asking questions, getting in deep, trying to build those relationships, if you package up who we are and what we're doing, hardest thing is to do it really quick and be brief about it. And that's something that I'm struggling with because I'm a talker, right? I fill up an hour every single morning, Monday through Friday, and it's like that. Like, it's not that hard. How do you package it up?
That's a good question. It is again kind of hard to put a finger point on it because the vision is to be a hub, all things soccer, where there's a place where people can come to information, a place where people can come to belong.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be able to, in the same day, I want to be able to interview a high school soccer player from Maine at the same time, interview somebody that is making their MLS debut on the same day, because all these kids, and young adults, they have that dream. They have that dream of maybe playing on the high school varsity or making an MLS Next roster or playing in, USL League One or US, MLS Next Pro or USL Championship or even MLS. I mean, the higher you go up in that pyramid in any sport, the more difficult it becomes. And I think anybody that's grown up as an athlete or was recruited understands that it is very difficult to get to a next level of a particular sport. So yeah, is it going to be difficult for us? Yeah, there'll be some bumps in the road, but it's something. It's a welcome. It's a challenge. It's an adventure and I've been sharing the vision with a lot of people here, especially the last 6 months, and here in Michigan. And I've been sharing, ideas with people that I'm meeting in other states. But you just give people a basic idea about where we came from 3.5 years ago to where we're at now and what we want to become. And they can see the website. You can tell them about different things we got planned in terms of stories, plans we have about for shows, the amount of games we're going to be broadcasting. And we're just pecking on the surface right now, because anybody that follows sports knows that most stories are not told. Most games, we can turn on the television, we can watch college basketball, or we can watch, Major League Baseball, the football playoffs, Super Bowl is Sunday. But most things growing up as a high school, as a collegiate, as a high-level club player, as an amateur player in the summer, most of those stories are untold. But this is going to give us a platform, a venue where we can tell stories. We can have people come in and tell stories. And I was having a conversation the other day with somebody, and I said, she was asking me questions about ideas. And I said, there really isn't a thing as a bad idea. Some ideas are better than others, but listen to people, what they have to say, their opinion, their ideas, because someone may come to one of us with an idea, and you'll sit back in your chair and think about that. Like, that's actually a really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be in the long term, very beneficial, could lead to something else. You never know. So yeah, all this we're talking about is a challenge, but it's something that I think that, people are going to want to come on board, want to appreciate, because, when we talked about locally the last 3 years with the Michigan Soccer Network, there really wasn't any type of thing on a statewide level here in Michigan. And, I've had coaches and parents constantly on the phone or through email, thank us for what we did. I mean, I had a conversation over the holidays from a parent in the Upper Peninsula where it's a different world up there. They're so remote. They're more attached to Wisconsin than they really are Michigan. But this particular dad was saying, thank you for doing what you guys have done. You've shed a little light on our soccer community up here that was never there before. So the long-term goal is to continue to shine that light all over. If that means a small school in the middle of Arkansas, a school in the Upper Peninsula, a college up in Washington, an amateur team down in South Carolina, that doesn't matter. It's going to be a platform long term where people can get involved. We can continue to show that spotlight as positive as possible on the soccer community near and far.
It's I mean, the opportunity for us to have great impact it's unbelievable, right? And we've talked about that on a private level and obviously a public level as well. Um, the obviously the biggest challenge, as Nathan's already alluded to, is getting people to understand, who we are and what we're trying to accomplish. But once they know that and see the potential for what we're talking about, then it really kind of changes the way you look at it. Um, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show or throughout the show about how, it'd be really easy for us just to be a streaming platform, right? It'd be really easy for us just to be a news page, right? Or send out email blasts to the hundreds of thousands of people who are out there in the world today. That'd be really easy to do.
Yeah.
But we're not looking to do that, right? We're looking to be everything, right? And everything can be a lot of different things. Right now, our focus is on streaming the best leagues, the best games. It focuses on getting as many news stories onto our website as we possibly can, and to help educate and create resources and tools for everyone involved in the game of soccer. Period.
Yeah. And I just had one more quick thing for Dan. You talked about sometimes getting kids to those next levels. And it's interesting because a lot of the players that we've covered throughout the years, and you've talked about it, have gone on to play at the higher levels. How much of a focus on that do you take into consideration when you talk about doing this job on a national scale and talking to these athletes? Is there a sense of pride that kind of comes with seeing them go on to those higher levels? Is that kind of in one way or the other? And I know we talk about shining a light on the game. How are you going about through what you do in your position to shine a light on the game? Because I imagine that has to feel pretty good when you see those players go on to play at higher levels.
Yeah, I think anybody, Nathan, that's ever worked for a newspaper, a television station where you deal with athletes. I have a lot of very good friends who write for daily newspapers, monthly magazines, whatever. Some of my closest friends out there are in Michigan. I have a couple in other states as well. But yeah, there is a sense of pride when there is an athlete from your coverage area that, hey, I have this kid, he's a blue chip football player. He just signed with Alabama. He was state champ in the 110 meter high hurdles and anchored the winning 1600 meter relay at the state track meet. And I covered that kid for 4 years. I interviewed him. He's a great kid. I know his parents. And then a couple years later, that athlete is excelling at the collegiate level. And then on occasions, a kid that you covered in high school, signs with a pro contract, is a member of a national team, is going off to the Olympics in a particular sport. So is there a sense of pride as a member of a journalist? I think anyone you ask that question to would say, a definite yes. Because you watch those kids grow up and get better. You interviewed them when they were in ninth grade, maybe as a high school varsity athlete or on a high level club team, an AU team in a different sport. So you got a chance to, again, start a relationship with that athlete, that coach, and their parents. And then, 5-10 years later, here they are. They're on television at the Olympics, or they're, playing in an NFL game or MLS game, or hey, they just got the call to go up to the Major League Baseball. That is something that I've witnessed and I've been a part of in my 32 years as a journalist. And yeah, sometimes it does make me smile. Another thing is I'm at the point now where there are athletes that I either competed with or against as a high school and a club athlete in the late 1980s, or wrote about during the 1990s, and now they that are suiting up and playing sports here in the state of Michigan or in other states.
Oh,
Did we lose? Did he freeze too? Looks like
Oh,
everybody's
boy.
freezing
Lost
here.
you guys for a second.
There you go.
But yeah, now it's at the stage where, I'm watching young athletes compete where, again, I competed with their parents, or I saw them compete, or I interviewed them 25, 30 years ago. And it's kind of cool to see that now the parents are watching their kids, climb the ladder, of success. And you see the smiles on their face, because you saw the smile of their face when they were state champs in cross country in 1998 or whatever the case is. And now they have kids climbing, maybe not even that same sport, but a different sport. So it is cool, Nathan. And it really is cool to see that. And, but it goes down to, you got to build relationships as a reporter. And I think anybody that works in this business that has a love for sports, has a love for the game, so to speak, is cultivating and building those relationships. They love it. They absolutely love it. And the fact that they can sit there sometimes and say, I covered that kid. I knew that kid when, and what that kid is really about. That kid is a humble, hardworking kid, was a great student. And here they are playing pro sports or international sports. And, it's a cool thing to witness. So I think those things will always continue for anybody that works in this business. And the longer you're involved with it, the more you can see those types of things unfold over time.
No, completely agree with you there, Mr. Stickred. Obviously, I come from a different perspective because I'm not necessarily in the same experience level as you, but I think it's cool when you get a chance to see the likes of certain players who maybe you called their name in a broadcast are now playing at the highest level of their sport. So that's always really cool. That's a wrap here on Inside the Game, episode number 23. I want to thank Dan Stickred for joining us here today to talk about the changes here for us as we look forward in growing the National Soccer Network and what that looks like for everything that we do. And we'll continue to make more announcements here in the coming days and weeks and months as we continue to get ready here for our spring season, which is hard to believe is almost 60 days away. But anyways, Nathan, man, it was a pleasure as always. Dan, thank you very much. That was a wrap on episode number 23. Don't forget, subscribe, like us, and share us with your friends and family, and come back for more here each and every day. As tomorrow, we will get back to normal programming, as tomorrow is Film Review Friday, or Film Room Friday.
Film Room Friday.
We'll take a look at the film. So
Say
either
that
way,
5 times fast, huh?
Film Room Friday. Anyways, we'll see everyone back here tomorrow live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Roku TV. So long, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.